It was my first week at Rowan, so I'm a brand new prof, I guess, and I'm excited to be here. And I'm trying to get to know the campus a little bit, so I'm just going to film this lecture for various parts of the campus so I can familiarize myself with where everything's at and hopefully have a little fun at the same time. And hopefully impart some interesting information. So I think this is my stop. We'll talk here in a bit. I love comics as much as the next person. In fact, I made a lot of my career drawing comics and cartoons and that type of thing. But animation is so much deeper than that, and over the years I've come to really appreciate its synesthetic opportunity. Synesthesia is the idea of the blending of the senses, and animation is really a multi-sensory experience, and that's why it's so exciting. This week we're going to discuss the question, what is animation? And I think it's actually a very deep question, and it might mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But I'll let you know what I think animation is and why I think it's so important and such an exciting interdisciplinary opportunity. I worked as a commercial animator and artist for many, many years, mostly doing cartoon work, and I'm a big fan. But that said, over the years, through the study of it, I realized that animation is so much deeper. It's such an interdisciplinary art form, and that's why I got into it in the first place, because it combines my interests in music, and art, and drawing, and storytelling, and science, and mathematics, and technology into one practice and one discipline. And so to think of it as merely screen cartoons, I think does it a disservice, because it's so much more. It really is a model for interdisciplinary study. The study of animation is truly an interdisciplinary endeavor. Remember that animation in cinema is not born out of an endeavor of entertainment, but it's born out of a study of science and physiology. Doctors such as Etienne Jules Marais, the Parisian physiologist, were developing techniques to synthesize time in order to measure the movements in human anatomy. And through these processes and through that sense of discovery, the fundamental principles of the photographic process behind animation were developed. It wasn't until much later that people like Edison and the Lumiere brothers sort of took these ideas of chronophotography and stitched them together to create an entertainment industry. But animation is deeply rooted in science and the observation of the natural world. Listening to this music, I can hear different beats, and it's kind of like cinema and animation. You have beats and pulses of time, and that's a great way to think about animation as sort of compositions in time, kind of like music. Music and animation are very closely related. The animator Kit Laybourne thought that animation was 75% sound, but if you think about it, there are a lot of similarities. We're dealing with time, we're dealing with rhythm, we're dealing in animation with pictures that move in a sequence. And here we're dealing with beats of rhythm, but the two are very closely linked. So this idea of timing and playing time and rhythm is really essential for the animator, because we're constructing compositions in time. And that requires understanding of beats, and what the frame rate is, what we call a frame rate in film or video or whatever paradigm we're working in. So think about animation kind of musically. It's a dance. It has a rhythm. It's very closely related to ballet. You have image and movement to time. So time is that fundamental formal element that we're going to be dealing with. Definitely getting a little hot out here today. So animation, we've talked about time and rhythm and how that's an important major element. And another major element in animation is the frame itself, the stage in which it happens. And I think this is an important and often overlooked consideration, because so much about the design of film, or any design really, happens within a certain context. Don't think of the frame as sort of the frame that you put around a picture necessarily, but also the context of the work that you're trying to create. And that could be the time period, the subject matter, but it also could be the physical elements such as the rectangular frame. And so that's another element that we're going to explore this semester as well, as a formal element in animation and synesthetic design. At some point in my career teaching storyboarding, I realized a major design element in any kind of film or animation, or really illustration for that matter, is the rectangle itself, the edges of the frame. And it became very clear that the edges of the frame are an important main character in storytelling and design for film and animation. And then our whole culture seems to be putting things in rectangles. Our screens are in rectangles, computers, our phones, our pages, our paper, our televisions, everything seems to be put in a rectangle. So the frame is an important consideration that's often overlooked, although the frame does not have to necessarily mean the boundaries of the picture plane. It can also mean the context, the time, the culture. It's kind of a contextualizer for a work of art and how we choose to delineate it from the experience of the everyday world. So the frame is an important another factor that we'll look at. And in animation, we're dealing with frames of time, so visual pulses of time that exist within these visual frameworks. Of course, animation involves art. There's an art to it, and drawing is, I think, a very important place. I feel very comfortable in an art room or a room like this where drawing is taught. Drawing doesn't necessarily mean using charcoal or a pencil, I think, anymore. It means sort of having a mastery of your tools, and that these days could be a computer or a computer screen as well. But science, technology, art, music, color, story, sound, so many things come together to make animation, and that's why it's such an exciting art form, because it combines so many different disciplines. It really is an interdisciplinary form. Here's a bit of trivia for you Miyazaki fans. There's something that Miyazaki does every day outside his Tokyo studio. You know what it is? He goes down to clean the river. Rowan is a beautiful campus, I'm noticing. I remember when I came down for my interview, I did notice a lot of paper everywhere. So hopefully here at the beginning of the semester, we can work to keep things clean in the spirit of Miyazaki by cleaning the metaphorical river, if you will. I'm really happy to be here in the sciences building, and I think there's a class going on, so I'll try to be quiet. But one of the exciting things about Rowan is this great science program and technology programs, and it might interest some of you fans of animation, cartoon animation, to realize, or even students of film and cinema, that the origins of the technologies that are responsible for making animation possible, or cinema possible, as an entertainment form, come directly out of biological sciences. The physiologist Etienne Jules Marais from Paris developed this technique called chronophotography. And really chronophotography was a way of synthesizing time and a way of trying to capture the minute subtle movements of muscles and movement systems in animals and humans. And the human eye can't detect a lot of things, and Marais and others developed these photographic techniques not to entertain us, not for Hollywood, but to explore biological sciences. So cinema and animation is deeply rooted in biological and physics and mathematics and the sciences. And so again, pointing to the fact that it is really an interdisciplinary art form. Well, unfortunately, the library is closed because of COVID. But I definitely wanted to check it out because I know there's a visual literacy and that we tend to learn stuff from the Googles and all that stuff anymore. But really, use the library because there's something in those books and texts maybe that hasn't often yet made it to the World Wide Web. But in there, there's sort of critical information that you can pull out. And I encourage you to do that. Google is wonderful, but it's also an algorithm, and it's a skewed algorithm. And we can talk about that a little bit later on. I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. I'm saying books is where it's at still. And I really encourage you to open some up, use the library, even during these times. Another formal element that we want to deal with is that of relationship. The relationship of one object or one element to another. And that's deeply important in the study of animation because we're not dealing with one image, we're dealing with a sequence of images, and how we plan their relation to the preceding and the image that comes after is really important in the skill and in the art of animation. In relationship to these flowers, I'm very large, or am I? In relationship to these flowers, I'm actually very small. So again, it's not about any one image or any one element or any one picture. It's about how those pictures relate to the pictures that come before it and come after it, how they relate to the editing, the cutting, the sound. So animation is very much an art of exploring relationships. So we've got time, we've got the frame, and we've got the relationship between one element to the next. And we'll see how this plays out as the semester rolls along. When we think about an object in animation, it's really not about any one object or any one drawing or any one image. It's about how they relate to the next one. And we can see this very much, and we will, that the space between the increments of movement from one frame to the next really can affect the experience of it. But I think that the idea of relation is really important, and we'll look a little bit at semiotic theory and the idea of how one idea relates to the next so that we can form a comprehension of it. In color design, if you've looked at the work of Joseph Albers, you'll see that the very same color can look completely different against its relationship to different backgrounds. So sometimes I think about this third element, relationship of one object to its surroundings or to another, as a really important factor in designing animation. So for the purposes of this first week, let's think about animation as a multidisciplinary art form that combines many different senses and many different aspects in order to create something. Let's sort of think of it not so much by its screen elements, what's on the surface, but kind of what's underneath. And I think for now, let's think of those underneath or basic building blocks as time, the frame, and the frame as a contextualizer, and relation, meaning the relationship of one image or one idea to the next. To be successful this semester, we're going to have good communication to navigate the high-flex model and good creative problem-solving skills. And that's what an animator needs anyway. So buckle up, here we go. Let's get this through this together by communication. Email me, reach out to me if you have any sort of questions or you're stumped with anything, and I'll do my best to help you out. A friend of mine once said animation is a lot of hard work, but it's tedious. So there will be moments where this is going to seem very hard. And so my hope is that this can be fun and that we can make it as enriching as possible given the unique circumstances of this semester. What a warm day, but it's been lovely walking around and learning a lot about Rowan's campus, and it's wonderful. I guess I am now officially a prof, and so I will adorn my official Rowan swag. Welcome to Rowan Animation. Books is where it's at.